Stephen, do
Andrew.
you fancy spending a quiet night inside number 9?
Again?
Yeah.
Go on then.
We're back.
Yeah.
I think we're excited. We couldn't stay away, really, could we?
No, the pull of this was too much.
Yes, and we've been deliberating, as people will well know if they've listened to any of these previous episodes, about what to do now we've run out of episodes to talk about after we got to the end of season 5.
So we thought long and hard and decided we'll just talk about the existing ones again.
We're going back through the onion.
No one's ever done this, I don't think. No one has ever done a podcast about a TV program and decided to loop round again. I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong, ladies and gents.
I think they have.
You
Have
reckon?
they? Well, I don't know.
I think this is a preposterous idea.
The good thing, the reason we're doing it is because we both were gifted the script books of series 1 to 3 for Christmas. And there's some stuff in there that maybe is worth talking about. Is there?
I mean, we're sat here now, so I hope so.
I think so.
Otherwise, it's going to be a real slog of a recording.
Yeah, so I mean, the plan is probably that these will be slightly shorter episodes because we're not going to delve into stuff in the same kind of detail as we did the first time round, and I'm not going to add clips or even do a synopsis.
Oh,
don't know about you.
Oh no, I had one good to go.
Have you got a good one? Oh,
no,
yeah.
no. Although I did realise there's one on iPlayer every week for every single episode. There is one on iPlayer. I should have just lifted that every time.
No, that's cheating. I considered that and I thought, no, that's cheating. And actually, they're not very good.
Are they not?
No, I don't think they're right.
They're not right. Job. They're just the wrong episode, wrong information, fake news.
You can just do a better job. So, I mean, let's start with the foreword for series 1. So, for anyone who hasn't got a script book, do they do? Yeah, they do a foreword for each series. And so, obviously, series 1 is the very first series of Inside Number 9. So it was coming off the back of Psychoville. And yeah, it's quite interesting hearing them talk about, like, you know, the discussions that were going into, okay, what are we doing next? And they'd had this idea for the anthology series, you know, based on kind of the idea like Tales of the Unexpected, and Play for Today, which I've not delved into. But I have watched a few episodes of Tales of the Unexpected since we were talking about, you know, what should we do next?
Yeah.
Even considering, should we do some Tales of the Unexpected? I'm kind of glad we aren't.
Were they not what you expected?
Unexpected Tales of the Unexpected. No, there's some great ones, but I think there's some poor ones as well. So it would take a lot of work to work out and there's a lot of them. So it would take some work to decide which ones to do. And I'm not doing however many episodes there are. Because I think that would take me beyond probably when
the end of series 9
to die. Yeah, well, yeah. Probably more like that. Yeah. So they'd had this idea of, like, because obviously things they'd done before, League of Gentlemen, Psychoville, had been like that continuous sprawling narrative.
Yeah, that was something that I saw an interview with them and they were talking just about this. And they sort of spoke about Psychoville turned into this massive sprawling arc across those two series that took a lot of work to keep up with. And it was something that we spoke about when we were talking about what we podcast next, and how difficult it would be to follow a series like that. Mm-hmm. And to switch from that to, we are going to go in completely the other direction, where if you don't really enjoy an episode, that's fine.
Yeah.
Not enjoying this story, it's fine. At the end of this half hour, it's over. Something new comes next week. You can re-engage.
Yeah, exactly. and it's a completely different way of approaching things, which they've talked about, when they on the launch night for the book itself as well, didn't they? That kind of the challenge of fitting an entire thing into just 30 minutes.
Which is just
it's impressive stuff.
I can't even.
And so they were commissioned. They got commissioned for 2 series, didn't they? Based on one was like this, the idea of these kind of one-off things. I think the one-off play ideas. So Tom and Jerry was one, and then a series based, and we talked about Nana's Party being like they'd been commissioned that almost a series around those characters from Nana's Party as well.
And at this point, it was called Happy Endings.
Happy Endings, which is
the most ironic title they could think of.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless they were imagining at this point a very different series.
Which, given what they say about Sardines, perhaps they were. But equally, I can't imagine, based on what you know about Stephen Rees, that it was like, let's just do some really playful, happy half-an-hour stories. Be brilliant. And it's because they talked about A Quiet Night In first of all being called Silent Assassins as well. I love the idea, hearing about different iterations of the names as they go through that stuff and the creative process, and even Inside Number 9 in the just that as the concept, and it's really hard to imagine. It's like, no, it's Inside Number 9. Of course, it's inside. It's always got to have been Inside Number 9 since the beginning of time, surely. But it was originally it was the link was between episodes was using a Commodore number 5, but then the BBC were like, "Oh, what about Coco Chanel? Better change that."
Yeah.
And they were tentative about Inside Number 9 for the very reasons, and we hadn't known this. I don't think.
No,
I hadn't.
No, I had no idea.
And we talked about it at the beginning of the last run through, where we both thought it was a political kind of satire, and you're going into through the door of some department in the government, and that was the reason that I put off watching it for a very long time, because it's like I can't deal with. I mean, real life politics is enough of a satire. I can't deal with anything more than that.
And things have only got worse since then.
Yeah. Yeah, and what did D. Ream say when Tony Blair was first elected? Things can only get better.
Brian Cox has got a lot to answer for.
Oh, BC. Yeah, so it's quite interesting that is literally what they say. We resisted Inside Number 9. It sounded like a political docu-series about the Chief Whip's office. It's like, yes, it did. You're right. So then they were like, Death's Door, Play Dead, Number 9 Nightmare, or A Can of Worms. But no, Inside Number 9 stuck.
Yeah.
So into Sardines we went, and again, this was originally, what does it say, a large wardrobe loomed behind us as we worked. We wondered whether it might be fun to pack it with a family playing a children's party game, Sardines.
They said that this was the third or fourth one they wrote, and they already had the concept of the bottle episode was already there, but they were already deciding to see how far they could push this idea, even in the writing process for the first series. How far can we push this idea of people being trapped in one space? And they were writing in a room with this wardrobe and thought, well, should we pack a load of people in there? That's how claustrophobic we can make this. And it ended up being the first episode.
Oh, man. And so it's so claustrophobic.
It is so claustrophobic. And we didn't really speak the first time round about the sort of the filming aspects of this at all. I don't think we kind of thought about that. And I think that having listened to one of the guys who worked on the camera stuff behind the scenes, that was very much their intention, was that you didn't watch it thinking about that whatsoever. And that was an aim they had when they were filming, was to make sure that you just felt like you were inside this wardrobe. And they were using a combination of like a false back wardrobe and a real wardrobe, and doing these shots. And they said they had to, during the read-throughs, pack everyone into it to make sure they could all fit, and it would be fine. It would make sense as a concept.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't, that is a really good point. Like, you just take it for granted that this is like everything works, and actually the logistics of filming that, you don't think about it when you're watching.
No, we've spoken about some of the episodes when we said that they've given themselves a lot to do, like with Cold Comfort, where they were dealing with something that hadn't been dealt with before in terms of filming those CCTV fixed shots, and even through to like Deadline. They chose to use like such a huge array of filming techniques that it was making really hard work for themselves. And this was episode 1. I don't know whether it was filmed first, but episode 1, where they had immediately decided, let's try and work out how to film a bunch of people crammed into a wardrobe and make it look real. Yeah. That's mad. What are you doing?
Exactly. But I mean, it's like, as you said, first time around, like it's the perfect start to the entire thing. Like for me, when I first watched it, it was just that, like, what is this? What have we got here? The absurdity of this whole situation, and yet the normality of it, because it doesn't feel, no part of like the logistics or the way it's put together feels clunky. It just feels it just flows very naturally. So you're like, yes, we're dealing with this weird reality.
I think the other nice thing about going back on this is that we have now watched them all and can now go back and think about how these episodes fit in with how we know this series develops. And it was really apparent to me that it's not like this has aged badly when you see what this series has turned into at all. This could have been dropped into any series as far as I'm concerned. It's not, you don't feel like they're finding their feet, and this is like their first tentative steps into this new thing that they're kind of unleashing upon everyone at all. It feels like they've hit the ground running, and it hasn't really dropped from that since.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Unlike our podcast.
We've gone from strength to strength and then just dropped up massively.
Yeah, we dropped. Very weekend. Yeah, so it's interesting what they say about this, being like the concept being this wardrobe just fills up with all these people, and then eventually they're like, oh, there's no one else playing the game, and then that's the end. And then John Plowman suggested there was something lacking, which was a dark heart.
Yeah.
And then they rewrote it. They say subtly hinting at a devastating secret and ending with a chilling revelation. I mean, they went all out. Like
it needs a bit of darkness, boys. Okay. Well, how dark can we go initially? Yeah, as dark as it gets, pretty much.
Yeah. Very dark.
Yeah. And more dark, I think. I mean, we first went through kind of with I won't say pretense, but with the kind of the idea that we were watching them for the first time and almost reacting to them as though we'd just watched for the first time.
Yeah.
Whereas now we can kind of really go back through and,
we've watched this
pull
twice
apart
now.
even more. We've watched it twice, 2 whole times.
Yeah.
And you go back again and again, and with being able to sit there with the script book to hand as well, you pick up lines that make it even darker still.
Yeah, it's really weird. Like, having watched this episode, I've probably watched it about 6 or 7 times, and there's things watching it along with the script book. I was like, how have I never heard that line? Like, I've never noticed that line before. Or like, I've never noticed the way that sits in the context of the other things going on. It's like, that is so dark. Like, you suddenly realize what that means. And yeah, it's really odd.
I also think that, I know it's probably really obvious, but it's really clear how much these scripts are brought to life by the people that they chose to play these parts.
Definitely.
The words on the page turning into Tim Key, and his whole Ian Pip persona is just, he's so good.
It's like given me a whole new level of appreciation for what actors do and what direction does, and like, you know, just because I've, you know, flicked through the scripts and to see them written down, it's like, that's not that. It's a bit like, you know, at school when you study, if you study like a play or something like that, and it looks like something that isn't what it is. And I suppose it's similar to, like, you know, a symphony that's written by a composer, which is obviously just notation on a page, and then you take it and present it to an orchestra, and then suddenly that actually makes sense. And the ability as writers to write a script and to know that is going to work, like, especially with these actors, using these actors and using this direction and all that stuff, like that, it blows my mind to think you can write that and know that it's going to work in a way that isn't just that line. It's not just those words on that page. It's something so much more than that.
I will say that on first glance, I feel like Stephen Reese's characters in this episode, their lines have changed far less than anyone else's. I think they wrote them. Well, we wrote these. We're sticking with them. I
reckon they probably wrote them before they even had the idea for this. Like, it was just
we'll build it around them.
Their two characters came up with it. Yeah. I mean, I again find it difficult to watch this episode in a pandemic world, because this just is the sort of thing that is really uncomfortable now.
It worries me how I've become completely conditioned to almost flinch when I see people on a TV screen touch and interact close up now.
Which this is kind of in the extreme.
It is, but I watched the first series of Back last night. I decided to binge the whole thing so I can start watching series 2, which just come out. And just people sat in a pub, chatting to each other, hugging each other, shaking hands. And every single time I'm going, geez.
Yeah.
Careful.
You have no idea what you're spreading.
It's really weird. Yeah. And you're right. This is just extreme.
It's with Ian. Like, it just, the times where it's his breath just reaching over, just, oh man. Yeah, it's just,
but there's
it is extreme.
Little things that I think that, like, Tim Key brought into this were things like him overrunning into lines. Straight away, there's the one about unfair advantage. You've got an unfair advantage. It doesn't say that he says that he sort of runs into that line and starts it off for her, but he does. And I imagine that Tim Key was just sort of having fun and seeing if he could throw people off a bit. But it's just little bits and pieces. And it's weird just seeing some things dropped without any real reason.
Yeah.
They dropped the Richard Ian switch thing. There's a bit about, you know, he was R.I.P.
Yeah.
Did they drop him talking about how they switched the Ian and the Richard round?
That's why they swapped it to Ian Richard. I don't know.
Because that's weird. He's made all that up. He has made everything up. He's made his name up. He's made up the initials. He's then made up the switching around two names.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I don't know.
And also something else with that, as I'm watching it again, and especially with Ian, I found myself paying a lot of attention to Ian and his lines, I think. When he's mixing up the Rachel and Rebecca, he's clearly messing with them at that point, because he grew up. He grew up with Rebecca. Yes, that's right, isn't it?
Rebecca.
Yes.
Pip
he grew up with her, so he knew her.
Or knew her when he was a
Yeah,
kid
when he
at
was
the
younger.
Cub Scout jamboree.
Yeah. So he knew her and that she lived in that house and who she was.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still playing along with the mixing up the Rachel and Rebecca and sort of feeding into that whole paranoia thing. And then when he's talking about Geraldine should be using the staff toilets and things like that, like he knows who these people are. He knows full well, but he's just playing his little game.
Yeah.
Inside the game.
It kind of is a reminder that, or a reinforcement of the fact that Geraldine is far more than just the kind of helper in the house. Like she was complicit in a lot of all this stuff. And I think, well, I mean, even from the, something I need to admit to you. When I first read these scripts, I feel slightly embarrassed saying this, but I need to come clean.
What is this?
So
Where's this going?
For those who haven't got the books, basically the location of each scene is written in the script. So it says, like, at the beginning, EXT, country house, day. So it's like exterior of the country house in the day. When I read it, first of all, so the next one is interior bedroom day. INT,
it doesn't say interior though, does it? It says INT.
INT.bedroom.day. And I thought it was a direction of when this is set. So in my head, this is International Bedroom Day. and then it was like, and then it cuts to International Ensuite Day.
But they're the same day. But they can't be the same day.
I've never heard of these days.
But what's weird though is that you came across the Ext first, which wouldn't make any sense in that context, and still went pushed forward with your view that Int's bedroom would be International Bedroom Day.
I think my mind just sort of blocked the X'd out, and because it's like, I don't know what that means, so I'm jumping to something that I do know what it means. International Bedroom Day, I can get on board with that. But then I went through
International Wardrobe Day.
There's some brilliant ones. International Wardrobe Day. I'm sure we'll.
I mean, for this one, it's fairly limited. An International Bedroom Day, International Wardrobe Day, and International Ensuite Day.
Yeah. So, just to admit that,
I'm glad that's out in the open.
I mean, I'm sure there's loads of people listening who also had that same.
No, there's not.
One of the things I noticed in the direction towards the beginning when Rebecca enters the room, and I think, was it Lewis picked up on this when he emailed us very early on, about the direction to Rebecca when she stops at the sink, picks up the big block of carbolic soap and smells it. She smiles to herself wistfully. And she does. She has that. And the other thing I noticed that's not in the direction, but is what happens when she pulls back the shower curtain. She looks up at the shower head. Yeah. Almost, there's a weird look that she gives it, as if like there's a memory trigger there. And so it just reinforces that sense of like, she, maybe, that line when Ian says, "Yeah, chill out, bitch." Like, maybe
she's a bit,
Carl says actually it was quite funny. She is a bit of a bitch, aren't you, Bex? It's like maybe there's more to that line as well about like referring to her involvement in, or maybe complicity, whatever the word is, and that links him. The wedding song that comes in, and that moment, which we didn't talk about the first time round, I don't think.
But we spoke a bit about it. There was because that was when she grabs his hand and he pulls it away, and I think we kind of touched on the fact that we weren't sure what that song was referring to, but it was clearly bringing back some troubling memories.
You wonder whether it was some kind of the thing that was sung to her as a, like, I don't know, way to distract her from what was going on or something. I don't know, but
I think that's, yeah, there's something not quite right about her,
yeah,
and where she stands in all of this. Like when they're talking about Stinky John, she's quite disparaging towards John. It almost as though she doesn't quite realize why Stinky John is the way he is. I mean, while they're having that initial conversation about John, that was Ian again. His head goes down and he starts looking at the floor as though he's a bit troubled. He's kind of distancing sort of himself from that discussion, as though he's kind of like, that's John, and I know why John is how John is. John won't wash himself anymore because of his memories around soap and showering.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's, again, I don't know why it is. I don't know whether we've just changed the way we watch these episodes now. And maybe this won't be something that we're able to do as we go further down the line, because we've kind of got into our stride in terms of how we watch these things we're looking for, the kind of lines we're pulling out, and whether going back to the beginning again with all of that under our belt means that we're going to start these initial episodes are almost like a do-over for us. But yeah, I am finding myself seeing just little things here and there, but that might just be the rewatchability of it.
Yeah.
And the writing and the fact that I've got this book with me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's in, there's little tiny changes of phrasing as well, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
So the scripts were they were like the original.
These are the working day scripts, aren't they? They were presented to on the first day of shooting.
Yeah. Shooting scripts. So the final drafts issued. The versions included here are the shooting scripts, the final drafts issued to the cast and crew prior to the first day's filming. There will be bits of extra material that were filmed and subsequently cut in the editing stage as we struggled to make the episodes fit into 29 minutes. Unbelievable. But there's little phrases like Ian, you know, even just that when they're talking about the RIP thing, and he says, you know, Rebecca getting married on the 9th of November, like, 9/11. You have to. So in the script it says you have to think these things through, though. And it in the actual episode it's you must think these things through, and it's little tiny things like that, which it's like who instigated that? Was that like the natural way that Tim Key kind of? And
it just happened, and they kept it. That shot worked. It also says they, on that initial bit when she gets into the wardrobe, it says they shake hands. Ian takes a handshake. he grabs her hand and forces a handshake.
Yeah. And like when Lee enters the on International Bedroom Day, he
doesn't bounce on the bed.
No.
And he doesn't hum along with the music.
The idea of him bouncing on the bed is like,
what's going on?
I know he's like quite a simple sort of character, but going into someone's bedroom and just bouncing on the bed and then leaving again is quite a strange thing to do. Yeah.
And the whilst it's not a change to anything, it is something that I noticed hit a bit more. Was it was about Lee and someone having a young boy. I think it was because Rachel has a young boyfriend, and this is how young. And Carl says, "If there's grass on the wicket, then play on." And Carl really snaps at that. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't quite picked up on that before. I thought he was just getting more and more annoyed with with Stu. But on reflection, it could be you are playing it far too close to the bone there with a joke about underage sex, based on what we know has panned out in Carl's life. And later when he's talking about being sort of struggling emotionally with things, and he says, "You have no idea." I think we did talk about that particular line.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And it says here that he says it emotionally. The direction is that he's very emotional at that point.
Mm-hmm. You just don't notice. Yeah, it's the he's only young. How young is he legal? He's 21, toy boy. Well, you know what they say: if there's grass on the wicket, let play commence. Which, like just watching it, you really don't kind of you don't pick up on that necessarily.
You think it's just Stu being a bit vulgar and Carl having had enough, but no,
like with him entering as the child catcher with his lollipop stuff.
Lollipops.
It's like that is what that room has been playing or used to play host to. Yeah, and things like there's no lock on the toilet door and little things like that.
Yeah,
the ensuite. Like there's almost that, like the referring to the ensuite as an ensuite is
on this International Ensuite Day of all days.
Yeah, it's a kind of an alluring thing to a child. Like it's the ensuite. Come into the ensuite. I'll find you in the ensuite, and that is so dark. Like yeah. Yeah. What else did you pick up?
Not too much. It didn't really diverge too much in the second half. There's a weird thing where it says that Stinky John arrives and has an instinctive hand over mouth, which went. She didn't gasp and put her hand over her mouth when Stinky John arrived at the door, which I thought was a bit strange.
Where am I going for that?
You are looking at page...
We've got different versions. I don't know if...
That's true.
You got the posh one.
I've got the posh ones.
Stinky John. Where are you? Smelly John.
There we go.
Smelly John.
Stinky John to that, page 27. I've got page 27.
Oh, no, I think 23. I'll tell you what, my page 27 says episode 2.
Not that.
It's not that. Oh yeah.
Ta-da! John. Rebecca instinctively puts her hand over her mouth.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
Not instinctively enough to keep it in, though. Don't know whether it would look a bit forced.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably one of those things that they maybe tried and it was like, nah, unnecessary.
But it's nice that they're not too precious about these things.
Do you know the other thing that I'm on the other page, the opposite page here, that I missed the first time was that conversation, you might have picked it up, around when they're, I think, is it Stu and
Lee.
Stu goes under the bed. Yeah.
The next bit. Oh, no, actually, John's hiding under the
and
bed.
Lee says, all right, but don't try to bum me. And then Rebecca says, I'm sorry, Stuart, but that's against the rules. And then Stu says, homophobic. Yeah, because I hadn't even picked up on that. And then Geraldine's like, oh, you've got that, haven't you?
Lovely. No, I'm claustrophobic.
That really made me laugh out loud when I was following it along.
You've got that, haven't you? I've got homophobia.
You've got that. Yeah. Yeah, brilliant.
And then, it's fairly true to script from that point. Really. Yeah. They drop the bit. I mean, I feel like they really decided to tone down Lee's childishness a bit. I don't know whether it they were concerned about it coming across that, because I know Stinky John's, I'm going to call him John actually. John's character kind of has this childlike innocence about him that we kind of guess is a result of him being mistreated when he was younger.
Yeah.
And I think, and I am completely speculating here, there is no basis of this in any sort of fact, but it feels like they've toned down Lee's childishness a bit, because otherwise you kind of it's almost clashing with that and running into that a little bit. So they stop him bouncing on the bed, singing along with his music. There's a line here where it says, this is like the Diary of Anne Frank. And this, I've not seen that one. Is it like Diary of a Wimpy Kid? It's like he's so amped up in terms of the childishness in the books, and they've taken that down a notch a bit.
It's a good point, actually, because he's not implicated. He's not a part of that historical.
No, not at all.
Sex abuse, is he? So.
And it's not even that it would kind of be suggesting it, but it might put that kind of in mind, not on purpose, but just not separate him out enough. If you see what I mean.
Yeah.
But like I say, that's point. Not. There's no basis of.
I think that's a fair point. I think there's probably some, even if that wasn't a conscious intention, I think that is a valuable thing, and it's probably a positive that's come out. So yeah, whether it was like an intuitive, creative decision that happened without them even thinking, that's
probably best. Let's not have Lee bouncing on the bed.
Bouncing on the bed just doesn't make any sense. Not that adults playing sardines makes sense, but
they also they also decided that Rachel was going to look, rather than in the bedside cabinet for people, she was going to look in the ottoman chest at the end of the bed, which made a bit more sense that there might be someone in there rather than in the bedside cabinet.
Yeah. And there's the removal of "that is absolutely vile" from Andrew, talking about like, what is that awful smell when he enters? That is absolutely. He doesn't say that is absolutely vile. I don't know if that's just to get it down to 29 minutes or but yeah, again, you just the whole setup of and the power that Andrew has when he enters that wardrobe. And when even just, when John comes out from behind the curtain.
I remember us talking about how awful that scene was, how horrible it was to watch.
Just submissive. Yeah, really, really horrible.
They
dropped polo, the reference to the polo mint as well. It just says mint in the actual.
Oh, did they?
Polo. Yeah, I think.
Other mints are available.
Yeah, but it made me think like, well, you're lacking the specificity of the Garibaldi.
That is true.
It's got to be a polo, and it's polos that give you diarrhea, isn't it? Sugar-free polo. It should have been a
because they contain a source of phenylalanine or something, which excessive consumption may produce laxative effects.
Yeah.
I've always wondered what excessive is in that context, but I've never sort of decided to push the envelope and see how many it would take.
Yeah.
That's excessive. What is too many polos?
You'd probably put that on almost any product, couldn't you? Unless it's causes
well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's too much. Too much can cause problems. Well, that's the definition of too much. That which is excessive and has a negative impact.
Too much of this will cause an issue.
Too much of anything. I did notice, actually, whilst we were just looking at this, right in the inside cover when it says that sardines, a baby sardine is reproduced with permission from Spike Milligan Productions. So is that like a what are they called? What was that group called? Was it the Goonies?
The Goonies, yeah.
Was it a Goonies thing?
I don't know if it was, actually. Should have researched this earlier.
I've only just spotted it now. Baby sardine.
I've got Spike Milligan written next to...
Baby sardine, Spike Milligan. No, it's just a rainy day poem by Spike Milligan.
A baby sardine saw her first submarine. She was scared and watched through a peephole. "Oh, come, come, come," said the sardine's mum. "It's only a tin full of people."
I mean, that's quite dark, isn't it?
It's a children's poem by Spike.
It's a very dark poem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when it's being recited by...
I suppose it depends on the context, doesn't it? Yeah.
It feels dark. If you think about what a tin of sardines is, I'm flipping that round, because a tin of sardines is a tin of dead sardines ready to be eaten, packed together.
I suppose, if you It's a very good poem. That's
It
a
is.
genius poem.
Spike Milligan was a very clever man.
That's a brilliant poem. Saw her first submarine. She was scared and watched through a peephole. Oh, come, said the Sardines' mum. It's only a tin full of people. Such a good poem. But it's been ruined.
Ironically, by Tim Key reading it.
Yeah.
And that's his job.
That is his job.
Yeah. It's especially dark as Ian is reading it. And that is the shot, which is straight out of a sort of a horror movie with the split faces.
With the reflection.
Yeah. Split reflections, and him just sort of singing it slightly out of tune, a bit atonally, just the.
Well, it's the fact that he's singing it, and the music is obviously completely detached from that, and that like dissonance there is just so perfect. It's like it puts you so on edge.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Actually, one other thing I did spot. There was a couple of times when they switched the camera angle, and they decided that it was going to be better to film from inside when the script said it was voiceovers. So it's particularly the Stinky John trying to get into the wardrobe, and it says all of the stuff is with John's point of view, with him outside, and that all the voices of, we're trying to push it. Oh, let him in, poor lamb. You can't, Mark, tell him. Maybe try behind the curtains. That's all given as voiceover, when that actually all happens inside the wardrobe.
Oh, yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah.
So I don't know whether that was just decided that it would be a bit weird to have those voices coming from inside the wardrobe. Yeah, because actually I feel like that might make it worse, because then you're hearing what John hears.
Yeah.
And it almost makes you feel a bit worse for him.
Well, it's his innocence even in that, isn't it? Like, because he takes them at their word.
Yeah. Oh, we're retreading this, aren't we? We're retreading this.
Yeah.
Poor John.
Poor John.
Stuff.
Oh, John.
Sorry.
Yeah, cool. I mean, I'm quite happy with us doing episodes like this. Just almost
rehashing it a bit with some new information as well.
Yeah, and just a little short kind of, I don't know, like a gamble through along the down. Like
gamble through the onion.
I feel like a little lamb dancing around the script.
I'd like to just find more Spike Milligan poems that relate to things.
Maybe we should find one for each episode.
Yeah. This week we didn't manage to find a Spike Milligan poem that fitted this.
So next week we're going to be covering our first, and I never knew there were international nights, but apparently there's an international living room night. So
I'm very much looking forward to reviewing the script of the silent episodes, which actually runs to far more pages than I thought it would.
Yes, me too.
But we shall not go there yet.
We shan't.
We shall wait to delve into International Hallway Night and International Stairway Night.
Can't wait. An extra-national...
whatever that means.
Which I think... Well, I think extra-national and international are the same thing anyway.
Do you?
Yeah. Because international is between nations. Extra is outside of, so therefore it's extra-national would either be beyond the borders of nations, therefore it's international, so everything's the same thing anyway. So whether you're inside or you're outside, you're all
It's weird that they gave them different kind of things in the script book based on that, isn't it? really. On
Yeah,
the
I don't know why
scripts.
they're bothered.
Why bother?
Why bother?
They're the same.
At the end of the day, it's the night. Right.
that seems like a good place to end.
Yeah, great to speak to you again.
You too.
It's been fun. Have a good week.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.